basic aim of the webinar that we started within the working group 3 is to foster the communication between the researchers. And this includes discussions, co-authored papers, which we need to produce, maybe some projects and exchange visits. And anyone, of course, you know about these short-term scientific missions. Some of you can also come to Serbia for that, maybe to do something with us. So, yeah. So we will talk about migration and borders. So do you see it now like this?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So my colleague Marta Stojić Mitrović and I, Teodora Jovanović, we come from the Institute of Ethnography of Serbian Academy of Sciences and Arts. It is an institution with a long tradition of researching migration, researching different kinds of migration in Serbia and from Serbia. And also it is basically the only institution which fosters the tradition of ethnographic fieldwork as the primary methodology of our research is actually going to field and talking to people, doing participant observation, etc. So this is our institute. Also, another project that the two of us are participating is the project which is coordinated by a Croatian institution, actually the Institute of Ethnology and Folklore Research in Zagreb, Croatia. And this project is regional, so it's not only focused on Serbia. It's called the European Irregularized Migration Regime at the Periphery of the EU, from ethnography to keywords. And this project actually strives to document and analyze the migrations which are irregularized. We don't say irregular because we believe that irregular migration is something that is being produced rather than something that is just irregular per se. So analyzing of this irregularized migration in the transnational space across borders between Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, etc., on the what is usually called in media the Balkan route. And the whole project is based on also ethnographic fieldwork, multi-sited ethnographic fieldwork. And we don't only want to include just, you know, the voices of the people on the move, the so-called refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, but also another actors who are involved in this transnational, in these movements. So these are also, you know, members of the local community, the government bodies, non-governmental and civil society organizations, etc. So all of these actors which are involved. And it is a dynamic field, and the practices that are happening are opposed. It's not easy to give some kind of generalizations, so we're trying to include in our analysis. The final product will be like one, it's kind of a dictionary of migration, and there we will have the concepts which are not only, you know, these big theoretical concepts that are being produced in academia, etc., but also some like micro concepts, emic concepts that are not so obviously linked to migration, but which occurred, which we faced with during our field work, and we felt the need to include them as equally important as these big theoretical concepts. Marta, can you tell us maybe something about our particular context in Western Balkans as an inner periphery of the EU?
Yes, this project in which we are involved, and also in regard to our personal research beyond the scope of this project, we research migration from the periphery of the EU. First question is, what does it mean to be on a periphery? We can have a perspective on periphery from its geographical position. So we can see the Western Balkan is surrounded with the EU member states, and it is a kind of its inner periphery. Peripheral position can also be viewed beyond geographical perspective as a political or economic relation, which is in its essence asymmetrical. For example, political relations, all the demands how to govern migration in the Western Balkans come from one position. It is from the center, from the European Union, and it is all organized and directioned to manage migration toward the European Union. It is also very important to say that peripheral position can be also viewed in regard to economical position and also cultural stereotyping. For example, what is common for peripheral position of the Western Balkan states is that the European Union has paternalistic and in many aspects neo-colonial attitude toward the Western Balkan states. But it is important to stress that peripheral position is not something that is bounded. Different peripheral positions can overlap. And it is very often that states and localities which are in peripheral position play with that, play with it. For example, in the case of Serbia, it is playing with EU accession process, as well as with its connections with, for example, Russia. And also China and so on. So it is there is not a single center, similarly as there is not a single periphery. There can be double, triple, and so on peripheries depending which center we are looking at and which aspect or the political, economic, cultural, and so on positioning we want to accentuate. Teodora, can you please put another slide? So my personal research is on externalization processes, which I understand as outsourcing migration and border control to the so-called third states. Third states are practically conditioned by different political and economic arrangements to conduct border control and also control of unwanted movement toward the EU. They are signing different agreements, but in exchange they're getting financial injections, like a lot of whole that migration control industry is funded by the EU funds from different accession funds to smaller scale twinning projects and so on. Migration and border management control is becoming a very lucrative industry in those states outside the EU which are already impoverished and are dragging economically toward you, and they're very dependent of infusion of money from the outside. So this is the main topic of my research, in which is based on the ethnographic material in Western Balkan states, primarily in Serbia.
Well, yeah, regarding my, let's say, topic of the research, especially for my PhD thesis, which is in progress, it is the topic of coercion, as like coercion in forced migration. So like I was wondering what is this force, that makes people to move against their will? What can it be? And I try to go beyond these normal definitions that are imposed by international protection regimes, such as the Geneva Convention. You know, what can it be this for? So what I concluded, you know, during reading theory and feeling my ethnographic field is that this coercion does not happening only in the initial moment of departure. For example, somewhere in the Middle East, you know, where how it is often stereotyped, like this crazy totalitarian leaders are destroying everything, as opposed to, you know, normal and liberal democratic states in the EU. So, you know, it's not something that is happening just over there, you know, this coercion. It also happens during the journey. And actually, this whole thing that Marta and I are researching together, it is actually some kind of a coercion during the journey of people. So people headed towards the EU. So what is that they're experiencing while they are traveling there, while they are trying to reach, you know, get there. And it also happens when they get there, you know, in all of these, you know, policies that should govern, you know, migration when people are settled. There are also many elements of coercion. Also deportations are forced migration, the same way as it's like, you know, refugeehood. So when people are being deported, they're actually totally, their freedom of choice is totally non-existent. So all of these are different shades of violence. Violence is not only guns, violence is not only bombs, violence, it has a lot of shades. And asylum, while it is, for some people, it is a protection, you know, it actually depends to prove to be a victim of repressive regimes and of many individual circumstances. And the only way to regularize the status for many people which come from different countries. So this is maybe one useful website that can illustrate this point that, you know, asylum is the only way to regularize the status. Is actually when we look the map of the passports around the world and which are the most powerful and the most weak passports in the world, we will see that the last 10 places on this list are the countries with the weakest passports, with the weakest visa policies are countries Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Iran, Palestine, Bangladesh, Pakistan, all of these countries where migrants or irregular migrants are coming from. So these actually power relations and stereotypes are embedded in the international policies. And really, I recommend you to see this website. It's really, you know, it really opens your eyes when you see these things so clear. And of course, on the first places, you will see countries such as, you know, Germany or France, or the first place now goes to United Arab Emirates, you know, USA also. So you will see the point. What I also wanted to address shortly, because we're already running out of time, is to address the cultural racism that exists in Europe, and especially Islamophobia. So in this context, religion has nothing to do with it, but at the same time, it has everything to do with it. It sounds paradoxical, but you know, in many of these narratives, official narratives, you will rarely hear that Muslims in particular are called out as the potential threat, as the potential dangerous migration, but actually the discourse of Islamophobia is beneath that very, very often. Many anti-migrant practices are rooted in this cultural racism, and these are only some of the examples. You know, here in Serbia, in Balkan, you know, how the Islamophobia is being, you know, addressed by some more informal actors, let's say. So the first example is, you know, how while being pushed back, people, a Muslim woman was told by the police that she must take, ripped her off hijab and said that this is Slovenia, here is no Islam, etc. And people in the field were talking to us about, you know, how these people are actually want to Islamize Europe, and that they should not have any rights, they should be closed in camps, which is actually happening, you know. So all of these informal narratives are just being used by the official practices just as an excuse, you know, because these official things will rarely state something against Muslims, but in the background it will happen. There are also like anti-migrant militia in Serbia, etc. And yeah, we wanted to address, maybe Marta can also help me, like how this on the Balkans, how we had this huge reconfiguration of borders, because when we are researching this whole migration, we cannot research it separately from the borders. These things are so interconnected, you know, and in Serbia and in Balkans, we had both like the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg Empire, and this divisions from the history also impact today's context.
Yeah, I can add that the discourses of protecting Europe, like last barrier of Christianity, so for example, Croatia is of Catholic Christianity, Serbia is of Orthodox Christianity against Islam. That these discourses, these concrete narratives, are often used and abused in relation to migration. There are also some counter narratives. For example, all this majority of nowadays Western Balkan states used to be members of Yugoslavia, which was multi-confessional and multi-ethnic state as well. So it is a rather complex situation. And for example, let's give one example. Regarding the faith-based organizations which took part in 2015 in migration management, but they supported the state system a lot. There were I researched 5 different faith-based charity organizations which belong to different denominations. Caritas, which is Catholic, then Čovekoljublje, which is Orthodox, and Gayret, which is from Islam, and also Adra, which is from Adventist denomination, and also there was one more Catholic organization which was actually financing the others. So it was very interesting that there is one donor, but in the end you have different faith-based organizations from different faiths that are providing aid to people. And I would just ask Teodora to turn the last slide to which are some of the topics that we can explore together. First of all, something that is pertinent for especially Teodora's research is the research's positionality and ethics in research. She can explain you more if we will have time, if you're interested. Also, we can have a basis, something common, that we have really different peripheries which are appearing, which are performing across and also beyond Europe, and we can do research on that basis. We can, for example, do research on border technologies, which bordering technologies, which can be physical, legal, discursive, cultural, physical borders like fences, walls, encampment, taking biometric data, legal borders, diminishing asylum rights, which Teodora mentioned, criminalization of migration, criminalization of solidarity, then different discursive and cultural borders, from banal racism of the bureaucracy, which Teodora also mentioned, to anti-migrant vigilante groups, Islamophobia and protection of Christianity, real versus so-called fake refugees, and seeing people on the move on focuses between victims and villains. And also points, a very broad point for common research is migration in practice, so we can research movement and reception practices. So with this, I would like to open the floor for comments, ideas, and so on. So also, if you're interested more in some of our research, we can discuss it in more detail.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we were like very short because, you know, we hope that some of you will also have some ideas. Yeah, but just what I wanted to add, these borders, like they are so they are changing all the time, and as dynamics on the border change, also the migration change, and everything is very interlinked. You know, what people experience, I mean, people who are on the move, what they experience, it's connected to some big decisions which are being made, you know, somewhere in the center, you know, or like in the Brussels or something. So all of these things can really come nicely together when they are compared, you know, and when we have different contexts and different shades, different peripheries together. So yeah, if you want to comment something or anything, you're free.
I have actually one question, but it's like practical question, not for maybe not for research, but I'm just interested to know more about why do these people why don't they stay in these territories? Why do you describe these territories as periphery? So it looks like this is kind of I mean the countries of former Yugoslavia. Are they like transitional countries for those migrants, and why don't they stay in these countries? Because these countries also belong to the European Union. So is there any
Not all of them, actually. I mean, Slovenia and Croatia are in the European Union, but for example, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia are not. So our country is not the part of the EU, although we have all of this accession story, which is going on for years and decades. They don't want to stay because, I mean, people from here also don't want to stay here. So we also have like a big immigration going on, and also because they don't see here some I mean, some opportunities for starting new lives, because usually they're encamped. I mean, they're in camps and they need like 9 months to be in the asylum procedure in order so they can start working and get working permission. And these people want to work, they want to do something, they don't want just to stay in camps and do nothing for all day. So of course they want to do something, and the asylum procedure is really slow and very insecure, and the outcome of the procedures is, I mean, it's always insecure, but yeah, and they just don't see here the future. But at the same time, they are staying because something that they are trying to transition for years, and they're being in transit for years, and they just get tired, and they here make some friends, you know, etc. So they stay in the end for some time. So, and many of the people are entrapped in this movement for years around the Balkans. So they be in Serbia, they be in Bosnia, they come back to Serbia. So it's going on for them for a long time, and they're kind of at the same time staying and transitioning. So it's not a clear-cut situation, but yeah, the most of them just want to go to Germany or France or somewhere where they have like some relatives, and when they think that their life will be better, you know. Yeah, Annette, please.
Yes, thank you very much. This was very interesting also how you conceptualized your research. And I was also thinking about this externalization concept and also actually both also the Coercion concept, because in one way, as you described it, it is not only related to the so-called periphery, but the situation continues when this magical border is like overcome from all what you describe, or at least from some of the examples and descriptions. So I would be interested if you have also been able to follow some journeys further, if somebody of the refugees managed to come into EU, and how the journey continued with borders, or if it is like now everything is open, what I cannot believe.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a follow-up, but that kind of research should be researched in other states, in destination states. And we had idea to do that, but we didn't have means. So for now, we have researched what is good with this project in which we're involved, that we can follow people across the borders. And we really do, we have a network of activists, of different researchers, journalists, and so on, people who are engaged in immigration research. And for example, sometimes we get a call or to try to find a person who was pushed back from this or that country, or put in a detention center and so on. So that is something that we can follow across the borders, and what we actually do, follow the same, occasionally follow the same people across different states. But we have not been able to see how some of people with whom we met here in this area started their lives in their intended destination states. We have some private connections and private relations that we are still in contact with certain individuals, but we have not done any proper research of that yet.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to say, that we have individual contacts, but that these people are mostly like our acquaintances and friends, and it's not really, ethical to use what we know about them from our private if they don't agree, of course, that they will be a part of the research. Yeah, that's also related to the ethics and how should we, and sometimes we gather information, but we don't publish it and in the raw form, but sometimes we publish it in the raw form. So it depends, and we are all the time having conversation with our colleagues from this ERIM project, and all the time talking about things and going through together. And it's really an amazing team, and it's a really good example of the researcher, of the cross-national research collaboration, and how just when people have some similar interests and standpoints, how it can be really fruitful and really not so hard to do it, just we have each other, and we always talk things through together if we have some dilemma, and we talk it through openly. So
for what I'm thinking spontaneously, if you continue into the EU with the citizen rights, or then you have this discussion about welfare bordering, which is also a kind of borders that developed and which are both applying to EU citizens and to a much larger degree non-EU citizens. So I think this is a really also concepts that could be used.
Yeah, it is excellent concept. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't necessarily. Sorry, just we don't have to necessarily follow the same person to see how these different borders occur.
No.
I just wanted to mention a situation when COVID pandemics was and the state of emergency was called around EU. Then we had a really large migration back of Serbian citizens to Serbia because they were losing jobs. And they were losing a health insurance, which was attached to it and so on. It was really massive migration in one really small time span. So it is exactly this welfare bordering and also this a kind of reconfiguration of who is foreigner, who is not, who is white foreigner, who is I don't know, Asian, and so on. So it is really interesting, and it is great. It has many levels and aspects.
And even the discussion of are there rights that are existing on the one hand, and then there's a big discussion that there are sometimes rights that cannot be realized because people do not have the resources or the support or the knowledge to realize the rights that they actually have.
Yeah, in our context in the Balkans, the biggest problem is first of all dysfunctional systems. So person who are coming here, if the welfare system is not functioning for citizens, it's much worse for foreigners. And asylum procedure is just it is implemented just to appease demands from the EU. It's not something that the state ever wanted to do, but it was forced with different agreements within the accession process. So it is really migration is not in any kind of governed or whatever managed for the sake of the country. It is just doing the job for the EU, therefore asylum, which is probably one of the only paths to legalize status, it's really not dysfunctional, totally asylum system, and the number of people who are actually getting asylum and so on. Furthermore, what Teodora was saying, integration, a possibility to work and so on. It is to educate beyond compulsory education in the primary school. Everything is very difficult for foreigners.
Yeah, also when we talk about the integration of migrants, I mean, you probably heard about all of these pushbacks or all of these violence that is happening on our borders in order to prevent people from coming in. So, and even preventing them to seek asylum. They cannot even seek asylum, and let's not talk about the procedure. So, when people are talking about integration here, it's just for some people, because, people cannot be integrated if they cannot come in at all. So it's really, yeah.
And even though we have a lot of people who are present here, they're in totally legal limbo. They're legally invisible, legally untouchable, because there is no system which can absorb them. The system is made to force them to leave because they give up. Either they manage to get into the European Union, or they are forced, as Teodora said, to go back, to I don't know, to give up. So this is something what is happening. The system is purposefully dysfunctional.
Very Hun, please.
Microphone. Please, can you?
On the issue of externalization, I mean, the European Union is supporting those periphery states to just abort the mobility of migrants or refugees to the European Union. Is there any, on the other side, the coercion side, is there any consequences if a country is not implementing or the agreed proposals or something projects from the European Union? Is there any sanction followed up, like the way we saw previously in the Turkey? there were some kinds of agreement, but they was also disagreement, I think, based on the payments, and they led the migrants to cross to Greek. And then they were also talking about sanctioning Greek or some kinds of legal consequences. Is there some kinds of those issues also in your target countries?
There is first condition to get visa-free regime for citizens of the Western Balkan states was that they controlled the movement of their own citizens and of third state citizens. So this is also the first thing to fall, which is Western Balkan states are threatened to have their visa-free regime with EU revoked. They will not be able to travel without visas to the European Union. That is the first thing, and that is always mentioned every time there is some increase in migration, something that is happening. This is narratively put by politicians from the European Union. If you do not control migration, your free visa regime will be revoked. So,
yeah, for example, with Burundi now we have this situation, because what is also interesting, it's also connected to this passport ranking. Actually, Serbia introduced a lot of visa-free regimes for the countries which are at the bottom of the list. So, for example, Burundi, Iran, Cuba. So at some points, citizens of these countries could come to Serbia just with a passport. Without the visa, which is a rarity, and then these citizens of these countries came later to the EU, and then for example, we had now with Burundi, and you could see in newspapers, for example, my acquaintances came to me and they were like, oh, now because your migrants, now we will lose our visa-free regime with the European Union. So they were threatening, that if we don't sharpen these visa policies, we must abolish these visa-free regimes with these countries which are at the bottom of the list. If we don't abolish that, then again, our citizens, like Serbian citizens, cannot travel to EU, which now we can. So now we can go to the countries of the EU without visa, but they are threatening that they will introduce again visas because we were not good, letting this
in controlling migration for the EU. Basically, yeah.
So your research is also it's both at the places, at the borders, physically, but also a lot of document studies and document analysis, or?
Exactly. It is something that is called critical border regime studies, and includes that multi-sided ethnographic research and documents, reading of documents and talking with people and reading newspaper articles and so on. So it is really like a combination of different things. And this is why it is very important to share information with our colleagues, because one person cannot dig through all those documents and follow all changes alone, which are happening on a daily basis. So we have to exchange a lot.
Yeah, when we were in Lithuania in the summer school, Annette had one really interesting comment about this kind of approach, which, combines both interviews of the people, like this bottom-up approach, and this approach from above, reading policies, etc. How it is sometimes hard to connect these levels in one, but yeah, we are experimenting all the time and we are trying. And for example, now we also, through this ERIM project, we are trying to have texts which are both, but in a way that it sounds logical, that it's not too too conflicted, these two levels. I don't know if someone has something to ask or add. Now it's 6:45. We said that this will be short. So
I was just thinking how to go on from this really important research that you are doing. How if there maybe also would be some themes that you would be interested to cooperate with others, that could be like invitations. If we, for example, know somebody who would also be interested in contributing in international corporations in this respect, or is there something that you are in particular interested in cooperating with?
we will see other webinars. We're the first one, so we will see others, you know, and try to find, you know, our matches.
Yeah, if anyone is interested and would like to collaborate with us, we are really open, and we can discuss and see what we can do.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.